Imagine living your life after 50 and feeling energized and excited about your future. Welcome to the Women in the Middle podcast, the podcast for women who are ready to figure out what they want and create the life they deserve. Here's your host and master certified life coach, Susie Rosenstein.
Hey there, today's episode is all about how to love your body and get stronger in midlife, even over 50. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast Women in the Middle. I'm your host, Susie Rosenstein, your master certified coach and midlife mentor, and I am so glad to be here with you again for this week's episode. Today we're going to be talking about your amazing midlife body. Now, do you think of it that way? I have a feeling you may not. I don't know. Check in with yourself. Specifically, we're going to be taking a deep dive into how to love your midlife body and get stronger, because I have a feeling that you would agree that your midlife body can surprise you in many ways. So many changes, so much to learn. It can be difficult to understand how to create the health you are interested in. My guest today can help, so buckle up. We're going to talk about all of it. But just quick, before we dive in, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you know that I offer private coaching as well as group coaching in the Women in the Middle Academy? I even offer a deluxe experience that combines the group academy coaching program with private coaching. I don't talk about the private coaching option that much on the podcast because I only have limited spots available that come and go. But I do get questions about it, and I started to think that maybe I should mention it just in case it was something that you were wondering about yourself. Now, as you probably know, I'm a master certified life coach and midlife mentor for women. Specifically, I'm a mindfulness coach for midlife transitions and have been coaching midlife gals since 2014. Sometimes I refer to my work as a midlife clarity coach, a midlife possibility coach, a midlife mindset coach, and even a midlife permission coach. There's so many things we just don't allow ourselves to do. It's so interesting. Anyway, it is all related when it comes to my approach to coaching. The idea is that you're going to break through what's keeping you stuck so that you can love your life again after 50. Common midlife transitions are turning 50 or 60, empty nest, caring for senior parents, career transitions, pre-retirement prep or retirement reimagination, that sort of thing. So many things come up. A big question for my clients is typically about what they really want to do, which is a surprisingly challenging question to many. You may have experienced this yourself. A lot of what I do is coach my clients to give themselves permission, as I mentioned, to dream bigger and to trust themselves more to go after what it is that they really want to do so that they don't have regrets. All that to say, my clients go from feeling stuck and unclear to unstuck and crystal clear about what they want with the confidence and courage to take action. Powerful results that feel fulfilling, exciting, and peaceful, truly life-changing. So if private coaching together is something you might be interested in to set yourself up for success in your next chapter, please go ahead and book your free, no obligation insight and momentum call at www.talktosusie.com, and we'll chat about what option to work together may be a good fit for you. Okay, now let me tell you about my amazing guest. Today's interview is with Alicia Jones. Since 2006, Alicia Jones has helped transform the health and the lives of women over 50 through her fitness and weight loss strategies. Alicia is an expert featured in tons of places in major outlets, including Shape Magazine, VeryWellFit, and Aaptiv. And she also has a BA in kinesiology and adds many certifications to her list of qualifications, including NCCP, Advanced Sports Nutrition, Group Fitness Instructor, Personal Training Specialist, and many others. I'm sure you'll agree Alicia has a lot to offer. And after you hear my interview with Alicia, you may want more information. You may want to learn more about her unique food and fitness formula, and you will have an invitation. You're going to be invited to join her free masterclass, and you'll find that link in today's show notes. So, without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Women in the Middle podcast.
Yay! Thanks for having me again.
I know. This is your second time on the show. The first appearance was appearance on a podcast. That's so funny. I guess a vocal appearance was episode 269. Of course, I'll include that link in the show notes. But today We're going to do something very current. I even have some questions from my community. We're going to have a lot of fun. You have also been a guest instructor in my group, the Women in the Middle Academy, it was just such an awesome experience for everybody. And now that recording stays in the Academy, which is perfect. So whenever anybody joins, they have access to it.
Oh, well, thank you for having me in all of these aspects, podcasts, workshops, teaching, everything. I love it.
I love it too, because I find you highly reliable, highly relatable, and just full of great information. I love your background too. So let's talk about that. Let's get started. You tell us just a bit about yourself and where your passion to do this work came from.
Okay. All right. So I started specifically coaching women over 50 when it became a realization for me. So growing up, my mother, she was a single mother, and so she would have to go off to work, and my grandmother lived with us to take care of us, my brother and I loved her so much. My grandmother and I had that special bond, the grandmother-grandchild relationship. We were incredibly close. But growing up for many years, my grandmother smoked, and she smoked because she grew up in a time when smoking was considered normal. So she was a nurse, she smoked, the doctors smoked, you could smoke in hospitals. Like it wasn't considered to be this unhealthy thing.
You know what, Alicia? Both my parents smoked too, and even working in a healthcare institution in the late 80s, early 90s, there was still smoking allowed when I first started my career back then. So things really changed for sure. But yeah, things are really different now with awareness about the dangers.
Well, I don't remember when it was exactly, but I was grown up, I was old enough, restaurants still had a smoking and non-smoking section. Like planes had smoking and non-smoking sections, and buses did. So this isn't just an evolution, like one day all of a sudden things changed for my generation or the next one. I think this was a slow progression, right?
Definitely. And I remember as a kid, I have this memory of we bred St. Bernards, and we did all these dog shows, and I even showed one of our puppies. But anyway, we had these long trips sometimes, and in a camper van with these big St. Bernards. And the memory I have of this, first of all, is sitting in the back. We weren't even wearing seatbelts back then. And so there was this whole situation, and there was a smell of the dogs. And I always had this nauseous feeling on our long road trips because of the secondhand smoke. Because we were all traveling on these road trips, and smoking was just so normal. It's so different now that it is with the awareness and with the way people are handling it. If they do smoke, it's very common for them to just step outside. It's very, very different.
Yeah. And it's the law, right? In most parts, I guess.
Yeah. And thank God we're all wearing seatbelts now.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, the point is that my grandmother smoked. So by the time she was the one taking care of me, she had COPD and cardiovascular disease, and her health was waning. And to the point where when I was 4, I can remember we had to get babysitters that came in at the same time as my grandmother was there, because she didn't have the energy to take care of me.
Aww.
And then fast forward years later, I had already gotten into health and wellness and fitness, and I was coaching women in their 50s. And I remember I was like, okay, there's this charity event coming up, World Wildlife Federation, let's climb the CN Tower. And so for anyone that doesn't know what the CN Tower is, it used to be the tallest structure, and it's 1,776 steps, which is about 144 flights of stairs.
Wow.
And so for this charity, I had recruited my mother, who never smoked, she rarely drank, and she took care of her health. And so I had recruited her to do this. She was in, but my clients were like, no, we're not going to do this. We're too old. That's what they said, that we are too old to be doing something like this. So because I had my mother, who was also going to be doing this, and she was 72, I used her as my marketing. I said, if she's 72, so can you. And that is what, there was no excuses. That was it. It changed people's mind, and we all did this event. But it was that contrast of seeing how my mother, that was around the same age as my grandmother was when her health was really declining, when I was that young kid and we needed to get babysitters to come in, to see that that difference of what happens when you take care of your health and you're aware of what to do. You have that knowledge to take care of your health and well-being versus when you don't have that knowledge, you're not able to take care of your health the same way. And so that's why I got into coaching only women over 50. That became my demographic from then.
Oh, that's such a powerful story. And then your interest in health. What happened with you in university? Because I know you had this passion early on.
Yeah, I had passion before I even went to university for it. It was for a very long time that I had it. I personally was trying to figure out what I was going to do, and I was actually going through a depression in the time of my life. I was incredibly, I had just moved away. I used to live in Spain, so I had moved back home. I left all of my closest friends that I've ever had. I was in a place where it was like I love Canada, but I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be back, but I couldn't at the time. And there was a whole bunch of things going on, and I was incredibly sad. And the only time that I felt happy was when I would be going to work out. It was at a community. It was at the YMCA. And the YMCA had a great community and a great facility. It had a track. It had gym equipment. It had everything. And so for me, being there was the only time I felt uplifted or happy. And that's how I knew I wanted to get into health to begin with. And then it geared even more, it niched down even more into the over 50 when I made that connection with my mom and my grandmother.
Mm-hmm. And you studied kinesiology, right?
Yes. Degree in kinesiology. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know you've done a lot, you have a lot more credentials than that, including television spots and all that. But I guess, what I really appreciate when you talk and teach is that you do have this background. And it's really a solid understanding. Like when I hear stuff about hormones and calories and strength and muscles and fascia and all this stuff, I just get confused. It feels overwhelming. And I just think it's great that you have a really in-depth understanding of what you're talking about.
Yes, and I love the research. I really love to dive deep. Sometimes that makes me grumpy when I'm listening to a lot of television or I'm listening to commercials or, the Instagrams and the Facebook reels because I'm like, nope, not real. Nope, no, not for that demographic. No. So, because you start to realize it's like the veil has been lifted. You can see what is actual science or proven versus what is just a marketing gimmick, for example. Yeah.
Yes. And it is so hard to understand my own literacy to be able to understand and pick stuff out, what's true and what's not true and what's good for me and what's not good for me it's very difficult. It's like as midlife women, we can't know everything. We can try, but we can't. I feel that way too. Like when something breaks in the house, we needed a roof repair. All of a sudden you have to be an expert on roof repair. Then the furnace died. We need to be an expert on that. Then the air conditioner died. And I just can't be an expert on everything. I just can't. So
yes,
it means also that it's hard to have the literacy to even understand what you're reading.
Yes, I totally understand that. Yes. And finances too. That's a big one. It's like, getting ready for retirement, getting everything together. You need to be able to figure out who you can trust, who has the information that is authentic and real for you and go with it and hope for the best.
That's really it. So here we are, midlife gals. And I know strength training is a big deal for women in midlife. If you could tell us a little bit about that and how we can make it feel like an easier option to move toward rather than just feeling afraid or overwhelmed by what we know we should, air quotes, be doing.
Exactly. Yes. So let's first talk about lean muscle. So lean muscle is in charge of not only keeping our metabolism high. And I know there are a lot of women, especially in midlife, who talk about, wanting to lose some of the weight, especially during menopause, especially around the belly. One of the best things you can do is have lean muscle because it's more metabolically active. It keeps your fat burning metabolism high. But more than that, it also is in charge of keeping your quality of life at its ultimate, at its highest. Lean muscle is what is in charge of, for example, you go from seated to standing. You get up, we talked about it a lot, but getting up from the toilet, you need to be able to have the leg strength to lift you up. You need to have the strength to lift the grocery bags home, to open the pickle jar, to have your independence, to reduce your risk of falls. It's also in charge of bone density, keeping your bones strong, because muscle pulls on bone and creates a demand on bone. And with that drop in estrogen that happens as we go through menopause into postmenopause, we no longer have this anabolic or growth effect, this strength building effect that estrogen provided. And so we need to really start creating that growth and strength. We need to create a stimulus that enhances the lean muscle. And lean muscle, I know it sounds so depressing every time I talk about this, but there's really a lot we can do. So we'll get to that. But lean muscle declines with every decade after adult life. We drop more and more lean mass. And so we really need to work hard at enhancing the lean muscle, not only because we're losing it, we need to maintain and grow lean muscle, but also because we no longer have the estrogen to help enhance our strength and lean muscle. So it's twofold. We really need to start working on strength training. But especially when you first begin, while in the future, when you're very advanced and you're working out and you're able to do it, yes, you definitely need to place demand. You need it to be harder and heavier. But when you're just getting started, everything that you do strength-wise is going to help enhance your lean muscle. So it can be as simple as taking those grocery bags, walking them to your car. Maybe you do some bicep curls with them. You do it 15 times. You've created that stimulus. Make it heavy until you're like, I need to put them in the car and I'm done. And then you're good to go. You've started to create some lean muscle. It's just about creating some consistency with that. So if you go to the grocery store, let's say once a week, you're going to do your big grocery store, then you know that once a week is the day that you're going to do a little bit of weight training with those grocery bags before you put them in the car.
That's such a good example. And the other examples you gave just made me smile, because yesterday I had a pickle jar I was struggling with. And those pickle jars are tough because you want to bring them close to your body. And then if you do get the lid off, you're covered in pickle juice. So it's very tricky, very, very tricky with those pickle jars. And then the other thing you said about the getting up off the toilet. I know I've shared this story before on the podcast, but I have a family member who got stuck on the toilet and had to call 911 for help. And so I always think about that story. I felt so bad when that happened, and I certainly don't want it to happen to me. And that is basically, what would you call that exercise? Some kind of a squat?
It is a squat.
Movement?
And again, so when I was talking about lifting the grocery bags to the car and then maybe doing some bicep curls, that's called incidental exercise. That's a type of exercise where you haven't planned it. It's not structured. It's coming into your day and you're going to embrace it in that moment. When you go to the bathroom, which we all have to do, this is your moment. This is your moment for incidental exercise. And we all don't even realize that we've done this incidental exercise when we have been in public washrooms. When you are squatting over a toilet and you are not sitting, I hope this isn't too graphic for you, but.
No, it's perfect.
Well, we all have to squat and hover at some point. That's called an isometric squat. And I don't mean holding on to the toilet paper roll as you squat. I mean, you are holding your own body weight and going to the bathroom in that position. Congratulations, you've just done an isometric squat. Perfect. If you are out in public for the full day and you've had to go to the bathroom a few times, which for some of us with age and pelvic floor shifts, that happens, then you've probably gotten in a couple of sets of isometric squats in a day.
Oh, I love that. So just be more aware of it. That reminds me of a story that happened to me once. It was at the University of Guelph. We were in the Arboretum going for a beautiful walk on a beautiful fall day with my dog and my son who went to that university. And it was just my husband was there. It was such a gorgeous day. That perfect fall day with blue sky, and it's not too cold and it's not too hot. It's just lovely. Well, it was during COVID, and the the bathrooms were locked. So I knew I was going to have to go outside. And I thought, and it was such a beautiful day. There were so many people walking around in the forest. So I'm like, what am I going to do? It took a good 2 hours to find an appropriate time for me to go. So I sent my husband and the kid and the dog off a little bit, and I said, just leave me alone for a few minutes. And I was in the most beautiful squat. And I thought, I am doing this. Look at me. I am doing such a good job here. I remember thinking that, look at me. I am really in a squat. I'm not too old. I'm able to manage this. I was so proud of myself that I handled this bizarre situation. And as I'm getting up, I had a terrible thought. Uh-oh, did I just pee on my pants?
Oh, no.
And I looked down and I sure did. So while I mastered the squat, I did not master the whole situation. So after that, I had to look it up and see what I did wrong and how I could improve that situation if it happened again. Oh my goodness, nothing like that squat.
So what did it tell you? May I ask? What was the advice?
Oh, I don't remember. It was the angle. I think. I'm going to have to look it up again because I'm certainly not prepared. But at least I didn't fall over.
No, and I'm sure when you were saying, look at me, you didn't actually mean that either.
No, I didn't. And also, we had enough water with us for the dog that I was able to wash off and get things under control. And it was fine. But it was very funny and not funny at the same time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that's a celebration moment, except for the last few seconds. I think that's huge. That's a big celebration that you could do that. And congratulations on amazing pelvic floor strength. There are a lot of women that are not able to hold their urine for 2 hours, and you were able to do that. So that's a big
And that
deal.
was scary. Thank you so much for pointing that out. So as a listener right now, if this has happened to you, you must send me an email and you must tell us the details because we want to know. And it's so great in midlife to know that you're not alone. That is for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we actually, inside of my program, some of the ladies have been really open and honest about, hey, we were going for a hike in the woods and we thought we could make it and nope, peed my pants before we got to the end. So yeah, things like that. And I love that you bring that up because that's pelvic floor strength and health as well. And so it sounds like you've got some great pelvic floor strength.
Well, it can always be improved, but thank you very much because life happens. So I love this. So this incidental exercising is great. I think it would just be important to raise your awareness so that you can celebrate what you're able to achieve.
Yes. And understand when you're doing it, because I think that's a lot of thing that at least women come to me. They're like, I should be doing more. I should be doing more cardio. I should be doing more strength, more stretching, more, eating less. And, the truth is there are some little things that you're probably doing that are amazing. And it's so important to celebrate that. I think there isn't enough emphasis on what you are doing. It's always on what you're not doing. Exactly. And yes, you can build on it, but what are you doing right now?
Well, that's a great question. Let's talk about that because as midlife gals, we feel very busy. Now, sometimes that's too busy, but it always is a narrative. Like for many of us, that is what we say to ourselves. I'm too busy to do this. I'm too busy to exercise. I'm too busy to move my body. What is your advice for women who feel busy but want to make some progress?
Yeah. And on that, you also touched on something because you were talking about the shoulds. And that's a big thing. I'm busy. I know I should. And so I think we need to get away from that a little bit and figure out what you can do, not what you should or are supposed to be doing. When it comes to strength, when it comes to health, quality over 50 matters more than the quantity that you do. So if you're really busy and you really do not have a lot of time, great. It doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of what you do when you are doing it. So especially we're talking about weight training a lot because we're talking about the lean muscle growth. What can you do one set of really well? So for the squats, we talked about that. If you're doing an isometric squat, or maybe you're sitting in your chair and then you sit and stand and sit and stand, you do that 15 times. And if that gets easier, you can start adding some weight. You do that. You can do some really light, a plank or something like that at your desk. Little things like that you can do in 10 minutes or less of one set of weight training and you're done. And it doesn't need to take a lot of time.
What's a plank at your desk? What would that look like? Like with your arms on the side?
So I say a plank on the desk because a lot of times wrists and shoulders flare up. You don't want to start just on the ground with your forearms on the ground and you're holding the rest of your body up in a plank position. So instead of doing that there, when you have a desk, it's elevated. Put your forearms on the desk and then extend your legs out so that you're in a plank position, but you're elevated in a plank position.
So you use the desk instead of the floor.
That's right.
For your arms, and I get it. So holding that position.
Yes, and everybody is different, but I also get a lot of women who are just starting that still find it difficult to go from lying down on the floor, being on the floor, to standing up really quickly. And so it also takes away the fact that you have to do that. You can just do it at the desk, do your plank for as long as you can. When you can't do it anymore, try and hold on for 1 extra second, and then you're done. And it's that 1 extra second, not 10 seconds, not a whole minute, that 1 extra second of pushing past that point when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Just 1 second later is where that stimulus is pushed. You're challenging yourself just a little bit more, and that's where the lean mass, the strength, and the benefit come in.
So that's great. Like with that example you mentioned about the biceps and the groceries, that one seems pretty easy one to do. So how would you quantify that? How many biceps should you do with the groceries if you can?
Okay, so let's really simplify this. Let's say that you can park around the same place each week in the grocery store. I mean, that again is really, if it's very busy, you might be parking very far away. Just think of that as a better workout. But just think about doing those bicep curls all the way to your car. If you're not, like, if we're talking about multiple bags, we're talking about the huge grocery shop, Costco, where that's not a possibility, then take the bags to the car, grab 2 bags that feel about the same weight, and do 15 bicep curls, and then throw them in the car. Done.
Okay. It's funny about Costco because I used to get really grumpy about going to Costco because it's a big production. With the parking and then the box and the bag situation, you might just be taking out individual items and sticking them in the car and then doing all the unloading, and it may take you 1 million trips, maybe not 1 million, but you know what I mean? And I think it may have been after you were on the podcast the last time. I have a feeling it was. I started to change my mindset about Costco because it really is an opportunity to do some strength training. I have to go up and down a half flight of stairs to get in and out of the house. So I don't feel grouchy about that anymore. I just do it. I'm like, well, amazing. I'm moving. I'm going up and down some stairs. And I just stopped with the attitude. I just changed it. And now I don't feel the same way. I mean, still, it's a production to go to Costco, but I feel differently about it. So the mindset really does create your feeling state. And it really helped me.
Oh, well, I'm glad.
Yeah. I don't remember what we were talking about, but I did work on it. Now, if it's cold and windy, I'm still grouchy.
That's fair. I totally get that. But that's what's a good point about that is there's a lot of times it's like, oh, I have to go grocery shopping. I have to go to Costco. I don't want to, but I do. But with exercise, it's like, oh, I have to exercise. I don't want to. I don't. So,
good point.
So at least you could even turn it into the fact that, okay, you're doing this other thing that maybe you don't love doing. Maybe you don't love exercise. You don't have that gene that tells you, yay, I get so excited by doing exercise and all the endorphins flow. So then use a thing that you have to do that has something like weights in it, like grocery shopping, as your way of lifting something heavy. And I love that. It's perfect because you have to get it done anyway. So use those grocery bags.
And some of the groceries really are heavy. Just today, I bought a bag of lemons, a bag of avocados, and a thing of grapes. And there was one other, apples. And I mean, they were quite heavy, all of them.
Well, they did, I don't even know where I had read this, but they had done research on the average weight of a grocery bag, and it was about 10 pounds per bag. So that's an average. We're not talking about the extra heavy ones with laundry detergent and all of that sort of fun stuff. But on average, it's 10 pounds, which brings me to another point, because a lot of times I will get women who come into my program that are worried about lifting weights, which is totally legitimate. I understand you do not want to injure yourself. They grab very light weights, like they're 2 pounds or they're 5 pounds, and they'll do a fitness test with me and have a full conversation. And it could be 10 minutes later, they're still lifting that weight, full conversation. This weight is way too light for you. And when I say to them, I think you could lift a little bit heavier, they're really challenging with that. No, I can't. I'll injure myself. And I always ask them, do you bring in the grocery bags? Yes, they say yes, I bring in the grocery bags. Well, guess what? On average, a grocery bag weighs 10 pounds per bag. So if you can bring those in, we can probably lift a little bit heavier without injuring yourself. We can probably do that.
But the fear of injury looms large as we age. I don't want to fall. Even I started tap dancing a couple of years ago, and I was worried about falling. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was 13, 14 and started tap dancing, I was not worried about falling.
Yeah. No, and that's legitimate. Like, I empathize with that. And I also empathize with the fact that, you might have injuries from the past. You might have arthritis that is also acting up. You might have frozen shoulder is a lot more common over 40, as of 40 plus. Frozen shoulder, plantar fasciitis. I feel like I'm being a doom and gloom again, but these are legitimate issues. Low back pain, and pain in general. There was this huge study that was done on women going through perimenopause to postmenopause. And because of the hormone shifts, there's more aches and pains in the body in general. Depending on who you are, you could feel that more or less. But so it is incredibly legitimate that you might be worried about risk of injury, risk of doing a workout and feeling so sore that you cannot function the next day because, you feel like you've done too much. So I'm not saying you have to lift heavy, heavy, heavy. I'm just saying also give yourself some credit that you're probably doing some heavy lifting already and you just don't realize it.
Excellent point. So I know from your notes that midlife women we grew up a certain way, and it was a very strict diet culture when we grew up. And there was tons of cardio. So we can all think back to the videos that we were watching, the new exercise videos, and all of diet culture, the way it was in our magazines. I used to read 17 magazine all the time, and Self and Glamour. Maybe it was Glamour, not Self at that age when I was in high school. But there were always diets being talked about, and it was something that we just talked to our friends about quite a bit back in the day when we were laying out and using baby oil for suntans and all of that. So anyway, it's nothing to laugh at, but it certainly was what our childhood was like. So can you talk a little bit about what that means for us now as older women and how that influences some of the ways that we think is a good idea to release weight?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all been there because for me, initially, when I started my dieting, quote unquote, dieting career, I was 14 and I remember starting to do really crazy diets. You read the magazines, being thin is in. It was all about more cardio, eat less, watermelon diet, what was it? Grapefruit diet, all of these strange diets at the same time where you're barely eating any food and you're supposed to do this immense amount of cardio. And that's how I got into this too. It wasn't until I understood that you could eat food and you could feel really healthy and energized. I did not know that was a thing. That took a very long time. And so I was lucky enough to find that thing, to find that you could eat food, that you could exercise and feel really good with it. I think for a lot of women, they're still trying to find that because they've grown up, no fault of their own, but we live in a culture that is basically like, be thin, cardio, eat less, move more. And that's changing now. Thankfully, things are starting to shift and we're starting to pay more attention to our health. But I think after so many years of hearing that, that's still a part of what many women are trying to do. Do as much cardio, do as much movement, do more, and eat less. And it's really more of a punishment to the body than it is empowering yourself, getting the energy, the strength, and living, especially this next chapter when having more strength and eating in a healthy way actually creates the energy to live that second half as you want to. These are your years. And so you want to have that energy. So it's about shifting that mindset. And again, it's about thinking about quality and how to fuel your body instead of thinking of the more that you need to do, more and more and more. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm just thinking there's so many other parts of our life where we appreciate that things have changed in 50 years. Mm-hmm. Yet some of the thoughts we're still thinking came from 50 or more years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, so of course things would change.
I think some of it is hard because let's be real. In your 20s, if you gained 2 pounds or 10 pounds and you decided you weren't going to eat that much, you were going to go on a strict diet and do cardio, yeah, you'd lose the weight. You'd lose lean mass with it. But at that time, everything, was pretty much okay. Like you still looked great, felt great, the whole 9 yards. You might have felt less energy and starved, but you got the results quickly so you could get off that plan. But things shift with age. And so, you could be doing those same exact things and you're like, why isn't it working? I don't get it.
Oh my gosh. Alicia, I'm so glad you brought this up because the same little things don't work anymore. Those little tricks to lose 5 pounds out the window.
Yep. Yeah. It doesn't work the same anymore. And let's be real. It did work then, but just because something worked didn't mean it worked and it made you healthier. It worked then. It won't work now because the formula to the way that you eat and exercise is a lot different in your 50s, your 60s, your 70s. There's a different way of doing things that get you the results. It's not the same.
At a high level, what would you describe that different way as?
One, focusing on strength training. That is a huge difference. Two, fueling your body. When you underfuel your body, you actually end up wasting away. You're catabolic. Catabolic means you break down lean muscle. If the goal is to build up lean muscle and you're breaking it down because you're not eating enough and you're trying to do this excessive amount of cardio, which cardio is great for your heart. It's excellent. And doing some is absolutely wonderful for your well-being. But when you do copious amounts of cardio, that elevates your cortisol levels, which is catabolic. It's breaking down lean muscle as well. If lean muscle is the number one thing that really fuels your metabolic rate with age, that's something that we really need to be focusing in on. It didn't matter in your 20s because you had all of your lean muscle to begin with. There was no wasting yet. It's when the wasting starts to occur that you no longer have that power. You need to tap into that and have that power by doing strength training. So that's one of the big things.
That makes sense. And in terms of fueling your body, what are the main areas or suggestions that you found that many women just aren't having enough of or they're not choosing? What comes up around types of food?
Everybody is different, but some of the themes that come in is first, they're not eating enough. When it comes to your nutrition, it's about making sure that you're fueling yourself properly. So that means that you've got to be eating enough. You need to be eating enough carbohydrates. You need to be eating enough protein and having the healthy fats. And right now there is a big, let's have no to low carbs and let's not eat that often. Or people are just really busy, like you've talked about. So there's this thing where it's like they get up and go, they barely eat throughout the day, and then they don't even realize it. There's no connection with that. And then the nighttime comes and then they're starving. So they eat and eat and eat there, and then they don't understand why they're so starving at night. And it's because there was this lack of connection throughout the day because they were so busy. Mm-hmm. So bringing some mindfulness around food. Just what I always suggest is, even though some people don't like doing it, give yourself a week at least of logging your food to see what your patterns are. You can just start to see what you're doing, whether, at the end of the day, if you're like, I'm so starving, well, you find out that you only ate once that whole day because you were on the go, or you find out you're asking yourself, why aren't I losing weight? And then you realize, well, I was at the office and they had cupcakes every day and I was having the cupcake and it was so-and-so's birthday. And then, I only had one bite of the chocolate bar, but then that one bite adds up as the next bite throughout the day and the next. And so you start to see patterns. So just start simple by logging what you do to see what your own patterns are. And there's no judgment with it. It's just to give yourself some idea of what you're doing, where you're at.
Well, one thing I noticed is that even though I'm trying to eat more vegetables and I am successfully eating more vegetables, it doesn't seem like I'm eating enough vegetables.
Yeah, veggies. I find that it's very hard for people to get their veggies in and their protein.
Yes.
Those are the two hard categories. Yeah, that makes sense because there's so many carbs around all the time. It tends to be pretty easy for people to get in refined carbohydrates or complex carbohydrates. But it's harder for people to get in the carbohydrates that are veggies and the protein sources. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of it is because we have a thought that it's hard. So then we prove that it's hard, but we challenged ourselves here in my family and we came up with a couple of ideas that are helping with grab and go. Well, one of them is Costco again. Now it could be your grocery store, but at Costco, there are, some options like chicken skewers, for example. So they're cooked, they're grilled, and they come in a pack. It's not one at a time. There might be, I don't know how many are in there, 5 or 6. So we take them out of the package and put them in a container in the fridge. Now that is such a tiny adjustment, but now it's grab and go. It's in a container with a lid and it's there. It's a clear container. You can see it. It's not complicated with packaging. You don't need to open a new package and think about that. You just grab one.
Yes.
And that's just one example. But we've done that with a few things. So it comes in the larger package and we open it up. We put it in a clear container that's super easy. So you see the reminder when you open the fridge and you don't just have to go straight over to the crackers.
I love that. They do that with eggs now too. You can buy boiled eggs and they're already boiled for you. So you just take one if you want one. I don't like boiled eggs, so I don't do that.
I love eggs. Another thing I've done is I tried this out. I wasn't sure I was going to like it or if it was worth it, but I have a salad delivery service. So as a listener, you might think, come on now, Susie, can't you make yourself a salad? And I can, but what I've noticed is I don't. And I end up throwing out vegetables. So these salads come with all the things that you mix together. And sometimes I choose not to have the dressing. I can't have dairy or lactose. So I'm making some substitutions, but I know what I'm ordering and sometimes it's not perfect because maybe the dressing's off, but everything else is okay. So I'll order it anyway. And some of them, they do have labels that I can eat. And that has been really helpful because I've paid for it. And it looks more like a meal. Now, if I pay for lettuce and sometimes I don't get around to using it, I don't have the same thinking as I do if it's a meal that's ready to go. And this is such a subtle difference, a shift, but I'm more motivated to eat it than I am when some vegetables go in the crisper drawer.
Yeah. See, the salad thing won't work for me because I have a few salads that I like, but for the most part, they remind me of dieting days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But what I like to do is batch my food. So to get all of my veggies in, I will make a huge pot of a vegetable soup. Like I have this one that tastes like minestrone soup, except I only have veggies in it. It's so good. And it's really easy to portion out, to put in the freezer in portions. I label them. I have a label maker. I'm weird like that.
No, label makers are so much fun.
I know they are. Anyways, and then I'll put a whole bunch in the freezer and it's ready to go. Anytime I want soup, I want a lot of veggies. I just take one out, put it in the microwave quickly and it's done for me. But I'm okay with cooking. Like I know you're talking about being busy and not really wanting to make a lot. So I understand that as well. For me, I'm okay one day a week batching my food and having a whole bunch in the freezer.
That's great. I think the key is to think about what is the thing getting in your way? What is your obstacle? Because we say, yes, we want to do this, but then we don't. So when you're not doing the thing that you want to do, you have to really think about why. Just ask yourself, why am I not doing it? And sometimes it's as simple as the way you think it's too hard. It's as simple as that. If you think it's too hard, then think about how that makes you feel and what you do as a result of that thought. You pull away from it. You're not curious about it. Sometimes I actually time the thing that I think I don't have time to do. Mm-hmm. And that really helps me when it's 6 seconds or when it's 19 seconds. And I'm like, really? I don't have time to do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just be curious about yourself.
It's interesting that you did that because I recently did that with boiling broccoli because I was like, oh, okay, this is what people say takes too much time to boil broccoli. So I timed how long it took to turn the water on, to cut a head of broccoli really quickly and throw it in. And it was the same amount of time as somebody's like TV dinner that they were talking to me about going in. And I was like, okay, so you want it to be easier. So you order out, but then the food has to come to you. And that broccoli only took a couple minutes, or, you know, you threw in the TV dinner, but it took like 10 minutes for that and 5 minutes for the broccoli. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's
right. Sometimes you need the black and white data to help you with that. Now, I was complaining about doing 10 push-ups a day at one point years ago, and then I timed it and it was 19 seconds. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
No, it's just really good to think about what's going on for you when there is something you want to do, but you find that you're not doing it, and be curious as to why, because you're really a smart, amazing woman. You can figure out hard things. You can figure it out.
Yeah. Well, so the way that my program works is that it's all made for you, right? But then there's the support seats. And I say everything that you want, we can tailor to you, but you have to come to the table willing to negotiate. So if someone just wants to come and say to me, no, I don't want to log my food. No, I don't want to do this. Okay, then what are you willing to do? We need to talk about what you are willing to do versus what you're not willing to do, because it cannot just be a shutdown, black and white shutdown. There has to be some negotiation and some give and take.
Love it. Love it. Okay, I have a few questions for you from women in the Women in the Middle Academy. So here they are. The first one is, how can you best get rid of that spare tire, that accumulation of fat around the middle, everybody's favorite part of the body? What can we do about that?
Okay, so especially over 50, again, we want to make sure that we're not going for long bouts of cardio. And we've already talked about the fact that you need to start weight training, right? Because that's where the metabolic rate rises, even when you're sitting down, which is really powerful. It's very important to do. And when you're doing that copious amount of cardio, we touched a little bit on cortisol as well. If you're doing more and more, you could actually high cortisol levels start to accumulate fat deposits in the stomach. And we know estrogen levels, when estrogen declines, the fat deposits go from the hips into the stomach as well. So we need to combat that. Short, quick, but if you're up for it at the level, high intensity interval training is known better for your belly fat or the tummy area, the tummy section. It doesn't need to be hard. So we talked about making it incidental. I know there's a lot of women that get terrified when I say high intensity interval training, go all out and be out of breath. But especially if you're new to cardio, have you ever been late for something and you've had to go up a flight of stairs very quickly? Like maybe you had to catch a subway, or, you know, you had to run to get into a meeting in time, something like that. That is high intensity interval training. It's not long.
Thank you for that analogy, because you were losing me when you said high intensity. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, you know, when you were talking about Costco and you had to go up the flight of stairs, you were probably doing high intensity interval training. If you got to the top of the stairs and you were out of breath and you're like, oh, okay, need a second before I go back down and do that again. Congratulations, you did high intensity interval training. So you don't need to go all out to the point of passed out on the floor. You don't need to do anything like that. And especially if you're just getting started, you probably don't even realize that your heart's getting into a high intensity interval training zone. So one of the easiest things to do is just find a flight of stairs, go up, and you're done. Start there. That's simple. Then maybe next time you can do 2. Like you did it 4 times, didn't you, when you went up and down the stairs with your...
Oh, yeah. Same thing when I'm putting towels away or vacuuming. Sometimes my Oura Ring always asks me, what kind of exercise should we classify this, you know?
See, then there you go. Does it tell you what your heart rate was?
Yeah, I could also see that. Yeah.
All right. So if you get up to a high heart rate, you just did a bout of high intensity interval training.
And what's high?
High is, if you're just getting started, 80% of your heart rate or greater. If you're more advanced, well, let's not even talk about the more. Let's just talk about the 80% or higher. And what that means, if you don't have an Oura Ring or a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, It means that you get to the top of the stairs and you are not able to have a conversation. So if you're talking like this, you're in high intensity interval training zone. If you can have a full conversation, you might need to go down the stairs and back up again.
Got it. That's very helpful. Okay, thank you for that. And here is another question. What expectations are realistic for me to have with regards to my strength in my 50s, 60s, and 70s, 80s, 90s? I feel a decline in my finger and arm strength. She's in her 50s. Some might be natural due to age, but she thinks it's probably only because she doesn't do enough strength training. So in your finger, like your hand and arm strength, what happens there?
Yes. Okay. So that's actually really important to note if you're starting to lose some strength in your fingers and hands, because grip strength is an indicator of quality of life. It's correlated to your quality of life. And maybe some of that is independence to do with opening pickle jars, like we talked about.
It all comes down to the pickles.
It all comes down to the pickles. So having that strength in our hands is actually really important. And yes, strength training is going to help with that, but so is movement. So there are little movements that you can do every day. My favorite movement is actually ridiculous because it just makes me so happy. It's a happy movement as well. You just literally shake your hands as though they're dead weight.
Oh, you should see Alicia right now. She's flapping all over the place.
Yeah,
so we're both
flapping
flapping our hands.
So it's not like you're the queen where your arm is rigid and you're doing this very stiff. It's as if your hands have gone dead and you're shaking them. This increases blood flow to your hands and fingers. And it's really good, especially if you've got stiffness and soreness, to do that first thing in the morning. Also little exercises like Madonna's Vogue, Vogue. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Like
so Alicia's moving her hands. So they're up straight and fingers together, and then
create a fist. And then you're going to straighten them out, but almost like you're doing, you're putting your hands underneath your chin, like you're taking a picture. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. I don't know. Who was the lady that used to take pictures like this? Was this Shirley Temple?
Oh, yes. I think it was Shirley Temple.
Okay. Yeah. So it's hands up, fist, and then Shirley Temple with your hands underneath.
Right. Perfect. So it's up like an eye, a fist, and then horizontal hands, like under your chin, taking a cute picture. So you just keep doing that, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, moving your hands. That's great.
I don't know about you, like even me doing the few in demonstration of what I've been showing you here. I feel the warmth in my hands.
Yeah, so do I.
It's the blood flow. You're getting blood flow. So doing these little exercises can really help with blood flow and reduce arthritis coming in. So this is so important because that is one of the reasons we get weakness in our hands. So you want to stave off arthritis. And if you do have arthritis, you can stave off potentially the pain. So especially if it's rheumatoid arthritis, your fingers may shift in shape, but it doesn't mean you have to necessarily have pain. And the more movement that you do with your hands, the less risk you have of feeling pain and weakness in your joints. So that's really important. You can do things like that anywhere, anytime. People don't even need to know that you're doing that.
Right. Now that makes sense. So even little spine movements and subtle movements can help when it comes to moving your body and really improving things. That is so good to know. And here's another.
So strength training, you do need to hold on and work that grip strength. So holding weights will help. And if she said that she wasn't lifting weights enough, that is definitely one of the things she can work on.
Oh, that's so good. All right. And one more question. Is weight loss completely unique to each of us? Is it one size fits all, or is it really more of a custom thing that we need to be focused on?
So that is a both question. So the answer is yes, both. So there are generalizations that take place. So for example, it's harder to lose weight as you get older. And when working with women, there is usually a handful of reasons why that happens. So not eating enough, eating too much, not getting in the proper nutrients, not working on lean muscle. These are generalizations, right? But we know this. We have statistical information for that. But the thing is that we're all really different when it comes to how we get there. So we were talking a little bit about this when you were talking about Ask yourself why it's hard. Ask yourself why you don't want to do it. This is where the human element comes in. The motivation element comes in, and this has to be tailored uniquely to you. Some people, when I say you have to eat more protein, they're like, yep, I'm willing to do that. I don't need to negotiate that, and that's what I'm doing. Other people have different reasons why they won't or can't do that. And some of that is psychological, some of it is emotional, some of it's social, some of it has to do, just with their lifestyle and how busy they are. And that's where things need to be tailored. So you have to take the science and what we know statistically as the generalizations of how much protein we should be having and how much carbs and how much exercise and strength training, but you have to take the human element and figure out how to make it fit you and your lifestyle. And that's where it becomes unique and very different for everyone.
Oh, Alicia, I call that shenanigans. That's when the shenanigans start, that drama. I know, right when you were saying that, one of my biggest dramatic things that goes on in my head is tracking food.
Yes.
Then I have shenanigans. I'm like, not going to do that. But I know it would help.
Where's your resistance? Because that's the thing. That could be you love your salads. And for me, there's no way that you're getting me to stock my fridge with salads because it reminds me of diet culture. And that's something I'm not willing to do.
Well, with me, I think it's just the commitment to do something tiny like that all day, every day for a period of time. It just feels like it's so easy not to do it correctly. And then how good is the data?
So then that would be more perfectionism that's the issue, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
Because you'd want to have everything in there, right? And that's another thing that I hear a lot. It's like, oh, well, I need my macros to be perfect. I need my calories to be perfect. But what if instead of looking at it as a way of being perfect, it's just a discovery to see when you eat, what you eat, how you eat, and what it evokes, what emotions, are you overeating at night? A lot of my clients have very stressful jobs. And they find that they can be really great throughout the day. And then at nighttime, they're like, I'm done. I'm so done. And now I'm off of work. I'm going to eat whatever I want. And that's where everything goes awry for them. It's really different for everyone. So, it's about figuring out where that resistance is for you and why. I think that's really different for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that. And now, what would you say at a high level, we'll just wrap this up. What is your best advice to women in the middle?
Get started with strength training, no matter what type you do, whether it's incidental or you are doing a structured program, get started with strength training and know that there is a science to it. There is a formula that shifts with age, but it is tailored to you. It has to be tailored to your lifestyle. You're in probably one of the busiest phases of life, but it can also be one of the most joyful and wonderful phases. And so it's all about figuring out how to tailor that to you.
And pickles and squatting. Those are all the things.
And pickles and squatting and going to the bathroom and yeah.
There's so many things. So I know you have a masterclass. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So the masterclass is called the 3-phase food and fitness formula that every woman over 50 needs to know to melt away the midlife midsection, increase strength, and achieve optimal health. So I'll give you the link for that. And inside, we talk a little bit about logging, but we also I talk about the science-backed formula for all of these shifts, how the food and fitness formula shifts with age, but also how to blend that to fit your lifestyle. So we're talking about both.
Love it. So I'm going to make sure that this link is in the show notes for this episode. And I'm taking that masterclass too. I've taken it a couple of times. It's a great reminder because I find that this information isn't my main thing. So I need to hear it a few times. I don't naturally just understand all the biology and physiology. So I love it. You've done a great job with this and I can't wait to look at it again. So you're all invited to watch this free masterclass. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think we covered a lot today.
I think so too. And we had a few laughs because some of this stuff is funny.
It is. Yeah.
Well, Alicia, thank you so much. Oh, I know. One other thing is you also have YouTube. Let's talk about that briefly, and then we'll say goodbye.
Actually, you know what? We were talking about hand strength and hand exercises. I have 2 videos that I would love to share with you. One is on specific exercises that you can do that are going to help with hand and grip strength. And the other one is for those exercises that often become overlooked because of issues with your wrists or your shoulders, like push-ups. For example, I have this really great video on how you can adapt the workout so that it won't hurt your hands anymore by doing them.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'm going to put the links to those YouTube videos in the show notes right near the masterclass. So all of the contacts for Alicia will be there, easy to find. Just go to www.susierosenstein.com, click the podcast tab, and just look for this episode and you'll find it there.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. I love when you come on. You have such great information, and I am very motivated, my friend. Yay. I'm very motivated to do this and really get it going and to work on my thoughts to, so that I just feel like it's easier than I think it is.
Yay. Well, I'm glad you're using the stairs, and now you can use the groceries again, too.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you're feeling inspired with lots of new ideas that you're excited to try. Just imagine those bicep curls as you walk across the grocery store parking lot. You will become a role model for all. Amazing. And don't forget, you're invited to attend Alicia's free masterclass, the 3-phase food and fitness formula. So check out the show notes for this episode and grab the link there. Okay, now remember, being the queen of your brain domain is the best way to be. If you want to get unstuck, clear about what you want with the confidence and courage to go after it, then don't waste another minute. Go ahead and book your free insight and momentum call with me and apply for the Women in the Middle Academy. Let's see if coaching together makes sense for you. Head over to www.womeninthemiddleacademy.com. The Women in the Middle podcasts are all about how to love your life again after 50 with more clarity and intention than ever before. And the focus is on coaching you to incorporate mindfulness as a regular practice. This is how you put yourself on your agenda. And it's about time, my friend. Finally, for show notes and links, head over to www.susierosenstein.com and click the podcast tab and look for episode 397, where you'll find all of the contact links for today's episode, including that masterclass. You'll also see links there for my new show, Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs. So thanks so much for listening. It's really time for you to put yourself first, one thought at a time. I'm Susie Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you next week.